Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Editing. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Pharma John. The future of medicine is here at Pharma John. Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we are filmmakers, actors, writers, directors, a musician, a producer, and we make things and we try to bring that knowledge, experience, or screw ups and try to use that as a place of analysis, slightly demystifying, but hopefully just having fun, interesting, technical, and general conversations about films. But it's no fun if you're not doing it yourself. And so we just yesterday I sent Todd an edit for the short film we've been working on. He was in town for like an hour and we decided to shoot apparently a 15-minute short film that was originally an 8-minute short film. And so I sent you the edit yesterday, and rough, very, very rough. It's the first, like, I had only watched it all the way through one time. That's how rough it was. And I normally don't share that with people because I'm very protective of my creative process. But I let you see it because you definitely get me. And so I feel less hesitant to let you in on that process. What was it like for you watching yourself on film? You're the star, you're the dude of this film. It's about a busker inhabiting a street corner and pouring his love and heart into playing music for everyone, anyone, and a lot of the time, no one. How did it hit you watching yourself and just sitting through, something that came together very, very quickly?
It was awkward at first, because I didn't know what, I didn't know. I was like, oh, is this going to be bad? Oh my gosh, what if it's bad? What if Wes thinks it's good and it's bad? That's
my nightmare.
But I wasn't expecting that because I don't know. I think that our tastes are so similar and you're so hard on yourself that like it's I didn't expect that, but I did expect you to be nicer to me than you would be to yourself. Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, he's my best friend. He's just going to say it's good, even if maybe he secretly isn't that excited about it.
Exactly. Because what can you do about it now?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that could be very much an attitude I take at times.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's like, well, why would I tear him apart when I can't really change anything about it now? So it's like, good point. I'm just never going to work with him again. But no, when I first, it's kind of like for people who don't record their voices a lot, the first time or the first few times you hear your voice recorded, you're like, I don't sound like that. You think that's not my voice. And that was kind of how I felt at first, which was, is that really how I look? Oh, that's a terrible face. Why? That's an awful face. Bad face.
The face that's in commercials all over America, by the way.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, they've made the mistake too. But I think, I don't know, maybe it was just a couple minutes in where I just kind of like let myself go a little bit and just said, stop analyzing like it's you and start just watching it as a film. And then about halfway through, because I had just left the gym but I couldn't wait. So I like kind of had it on. Right. And I got into my driveway and it was about halfway through and I just sat there and I just kept watching it. And I thought about the 6 or 7 minute mark, I was like, wow, this is actually entertaining. Like, I don't know where this is going. I don't know what because I tried to watch it from the point of view of not knowing what the script was, right? Just like somebody new, right? And I said, I don't know where this is going, and I kind of didn't because I hadn't seen the edit, I'd seen the script, and by the end of it, I thought that was beautiful. Like, I really liked it, not having anything to do with me being the person, me being the actor, but just
you're not that vain, unfortunately for me.
I mean, I'd like to think not, but I thought it was a beautiful story that was well edited and well told. Like I noticed your camera work. in a good way, because I was watching kind of for that. Right.
Yeah.
And how, in this, not to give too much away, but there's this busker and things happen and he gets a little upset. Right. And in these moments where he's supposed to be upset, I remember those moments on set and, trying to feel that, right. Not emote it, but feel it. And it was fine. My performance was fine, but your camera work, like where you were, like being across the street, having it be handheld. So it wasn't so like static. So I felt a little off, those times. And like, I felt it not through necessarily the performance, but through the actual visual art of it. Right. And I loved the location. Location was fantastic, man. Great find at, what was it, 4th and Red River?
Yeah.
Great find there. Like the night shots are just so beautiful. They're so beautiful, right? And the moments, like there's these moments where I'm sitting on the ground. There's a moment where I'm sitting on the ground. These people are just walking by me. They're not looking at me at all. And this is all real. This is all like, we didn't plan for these people to come by. And it just played really well. And man, I'm not trying to toot your horn, but I'm kind of tooting your horn on purpose because like it could have not landed.
Yeah.
Even with the same performance with somebody else shooting, with somebody without the vision, shooting or whatever. And it also, to Serge's credit too, sounded really great. Like I'm sitting here watching it and you touched no audio.
Zero. I didn't EQ. I didn't even add like dB on a couple clips. I literally, God. Is. Yeah.
It already sounded pretty damn balanced and pretty EQ'd. Like it sounds really good. And you're shooting from across the street, right?
Yeah.
So in some scenarios, and I know that we had him on most of the time, but not all the time. But anyway, and so my text back to you was, I adored it. Right. And I think that was a good description of it, because it's just a little story about a little emotion that it has big feelings. Right. And, it was, I liked it.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited about it just because I'm so in love with whatever Wong Kar-wai and, films like Everything Everywhere, just because it's about internalizing things. It's not about always externalizing what's happening underneath. And more and more I'm drawn to those stories that let you breathe in a moment, breathe in a space. And I've never told those kinds of stories. And so I was just very nervous about going there and saying, hey, do you trust your storytelling capability and what you're writing? Because I knew the writing worked on the page and I knew it would work in the edit. But there's a lot that happens in between the writing and the editing. It's everything.
The meat of it.
And that was the big question mark is, could I put everyone in their best position to succeed and also be loose enough? Because that was a big point of this too, was to go in not very strict. Like I didn't have any shot list walking on set, which is 0% like me. I've never done that on any shoot before, other than like documentary work. And so walking in with that attitude of, I think mentally I know what I want to do. And if you were to watch, there's that 4.5 minute scene between you and Jess. If you were to watch that progression, you would see the camera work change from the first through the fourth take. Like, oh, I started over here. I realized, I didn't like that. Changed on the second take. Oh, I realized I didn't like XYZ. Changed that. And then the third and fourth look very similar. But I just left a lot of it. And mentally I knew, okay, I'm going to want some distance. By the end of the film, I want to make sure we feel the disconnect. And so in order to feel that mentally, I knew I was walking in wanting to start with a lot of close-ups and tights. Even it doesn't matter how wide my lens was or how long. I knew I was going to be physically close to you. And that would give me a lot of energy, a lot of intimacy. And then I also knew at a certain points, I was going to want to jump across the street. And so I just started picking and choosing places to start inserting that based on what felt right. Like I didn't overly analyze it, which may surprise our regular listeners. I was just like, I'm going to just feel my way through it. And the whole point was for us to just have fun, get on set, have fun, don't beat ourselves in the face over this thing. And that made me nervous as well. And so putting that first edit together, and I watched it and I was like, am I crazy or is this kind of working? And I just needed a second set of eyes, someone who knew, the film a little bit. And so I was like, I don't trust anyone more than Todd. And so I was like, if he comes back and he's like, cool, man, I think, I would never judge you if you were like, man, it's just not working for me. It's unlikely for you to say something like that. And so I was already ready to heavily analyze your response. Yeah. And so whenever you came back with that, I was like, oh, wow, no, that's accurate. You saying I adore it, because that's how I felt. I felt charmed, and that I just adored it. Like, it's not trying to be a big thing. It's letting it be a small thing. And as we'll discuss, I like small, intimate stories far more than, ones that are trying to accomplish all the things and make you feel. We talk about superhero movies where the fate of the universe is at stake. And you're like, I can't imagine the universe. But if you tell me the fate of this cat is at stake, now that I can buy into, because I know that cat now. And I've seen it, chase the ball of yarn or whatever, right? It's like, that's more personal. It feels more real. And therefore the stakes are, ironically, higher. You just don't expect the small things to mean more. And yet they do. And so, I'm excited. I think we talked about, once this thing is finished, I learned a lot in the process about things I do and don't like with film. And so I think once we're finalized and this thing is shipped, so to speak, then we'll do a bonus episode on our Patreon and just kind of go through the whole thing, the experience of shooting it, writing it, pre-pro. I think we have different perspectives on certain parts of the process, and it'll be fun kind of hashing that out. Maybe we'll bring Jess in for a spell to discuss what she experienced, and whoever else. It'll be fun. I think that'll make for a really fun 90-minute bonus episode on Patreon. So if you're not a subscriber there, we have a lot of stuff. I've been wanting to do more stuff with Key, and we did one episode on the bear, and I lost her because she got a job, an internship at one of the best production companies in the world. And so
there you go.
Yeah. She asked me not to say, even though it's technically public. But the agency, is very, I don't know, sketchy on just not necessarily privacy, but just making sure their interns don't get exposed to bad elements, let's say. And so, so I don't expect to see her on one of our episodes again until like a year. But I am working on new stuff with Joe. I'm inviting Joe, and we're going to start by looking at the Orville. And so I'm excited to do that. And if you have time, Todd, you should join us, but it's an undertaking. It's like 10 or 12 episodes, but I'm excited to just talk sci-fi with Joe and hopefully you, but no pressure, Todd, to be everywhere all at once.
Nice. Well, to that end, today we are covering Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you have not seen this film, please pause the episode and go watch it, because it's going to spoil a bunch of stuff. Yeah,
we'll look at a bunch of things. My notes are very loose. I debated there's two ways to approach a movie like this, and that's more conversationally, more fluid, or very detailed, because there is so much happening in this movie. I could easily spend just an hour and a half, 2 hours going over, and piecing it all together. And both of those actually sound really fun to me. But I think for this, and maybe I'll do another episode at some point. We can go into like crazy detail on it on a bonus episode. But I just really am more interested, I think, in the conversational aspect. This, in one sense, reminds me of a ghost story where there's different ways to look at a movie. Sometimes it's the conversation around the movie that's just as exciting as the movie itself. And I think this is one of those times. But we'll look at some of the writing and directing, the humor and drama, making tough subjects palatable for everyone, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. When an interdimensional rupture threatens to unravel reality, the fate of the world is suddenly in the hands of a Chinese immigrant who must connect with other universes and the lives she could have led. Written and directed by Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. Cinematography by Larkin Seipel. Featuring Michelle Yeoh as Evelyn Wang, Stephanie Hsu as Joy or Jobu Tabaki, Ki Hui Wan as Wayman Wang, James Hong as Gong Gong, and Jamie Lee Curtis as Deirdre or IRS agent.
Listen, you're only using the other words that require special skills, do you understand? If you fall for the temptations, you invite contradiction, chaos. The clay pot could shatter and you could die. Or far worse.
What can be worse than death?
We should keep moving until we impress us.
No. Enough of your clay pots, cream cheese, no cows. Explain it all to me now.
You're right. In the Alphaverse, we began training many young minds to verse jump. But there was one who was far and above the most gifted. Our little explorer. You saw her potential, so you pushed her beyond her limit.
Warning, unstable.
Though the overloaded mind usually dies, instead, her mind was fractured.
Warning, unstable. Mind fracturing.
And now, her mind experiences every world, every possibility, at the same exact time, commanding the infinite knowledge and power of the multiverse. Now she's seen too much, lost any sense of morality, any belief in objective truth.
What does she want?
No one knows. All we know is she's looking for you.
Okay, everybody, deep breath. Don't forget to breathe. All right, Todd, if that's your real name, Tobu. And so Tobu Jabaki. So you've seen this a couple times. It sounds like maybe 3 or 4 times. We saw it on a layover. Basically, you popped into Austin for the holidays, and we dropped out to go check this out, and then had a great conversation in the car. And I really wish I had debated bringing like a Zoom recorder I knew we were going to have a conversation, and I wish I'd recorded it just as a bonus episode, right? And largely we both, loved it with minor reservations, but overwhelmingly loved it. And I'm curious, in the intervening viewings, how is it landing for you now? What is this speaking to? How do you feel about it?
Well, this is one of those films that's definitely, I would say, even if you get it, quote unquote, the first time, definitely requires a second viewing. I will say requires, because I just think that you get so much more watching it again. The first time, you don't know what's happening. You're not fully present when some of these really important moments happen, because you're just trying to follow along, right? And you're trying to get it, and you're a little shocked when some crazy weird things happen, like the hot dog fingers situation. You're thinking, what the hell, But on a second viewing, it takes on a different meaning, right? This idea of everything that could possibly happening all at the same time is kind of mind bending. And so you're trying to process all that while staying present in a story is really difficult to do. I mean, it's also very difficult to create. So like this whole movie to me is, I mean, the more I watch it, the more I absolutely adore it. And I think that I would really like to have heard that conversation that we had, because I probably am completely different now. I think that after my first viewing, you know, it also depends on where you are in your life, right? Like, I think that if you are just straight up happy and everything is great in your life, you could look at this movie and just watch it as a movie and think like, oh, you know, like, yeah, it was fun and funny and weird and interesting. Okay, cool. You know, but if you have children, or you're married, or you're, you know, depressed, or you're, you know, you feel lost at some points or whatever, like, I think it just takes on a completely different meaning for you, depending. And the more you watch it, the more you can identify with all the other types of scenarios that happen. Even the sausage fingers scenario was beautiful. It was absolutely gorgeous. And the first time I watched it, it was just funny and weird and like, what the hell is going on? But the second time I watched it, it's heartbreaking and beautiful. And how do you make that heartbreaking and beautiful? Like, you gotta have intention behind, you know, not just your script, but your acting and your cinematography and the editing. I mean, the editing and the music in this film is up there with any other Oscar-winning film I've ever seen. It is unbelievable because it keeps you in these moments that are so easy to lose you, because they are so opposite from what you were, where you just were 5 seconds ago. So you have to, I don't know, you have to use all the tools at your disposal to keep people there. And I think that they do it so well. And there's literally everything is there. I mean, you go from, you know, this chaotic, just slow down, my God, you know, feeling in the beginning where she's just all over the place and there's all this yelling and she's running around looking for these clothes and you're just like, stop, oh my gosh, all the way to complete silence where there's only subtitles and you're a rock in a desolate wasteland, right? For all eternity. And yeah, that's a possibility too. And that moment got me, like, it got me in the theater and it got me again. Yeah. That moment is just absolutely brilliant. Anyway, so the more I watch this film, the more it's like becomes one of my favorite films, to be honest. It's just so beautifully done. And the idea of the black hole being an everything bagel is so wonderful and beautiful. You know, I didn't really get it the first time I watched it. I mean, I got it. Yeah, I get the concept of it being an everything bagel, sure. But if we're representing everything, everywhere, all that at the same time, is like just a beautiful thing. And how her daughter is, how Joy is Jobu is just a wonderful thing too, because she's searching for her daughter, her real daughter. Like, she's trying to save her daughter. Her daughter's searching for her mother. We're constantly doing that as parents, as people. Like, I love you. I'm trying to find you. I'm trying to keep you close. But at the same time, I need to let you go, like, all at the same time. And finding that balance. Well, you know what? You are getting fat, you know? And I am your mother, so I'm gonna call you all the time and all this stuff. And you don't have to always pick up, you know, but you're also pulling away from, you know, it just, there's so much that sometimes we don't slow down, and it addresses all of this stuff. And then, you know, having that wonderful moment where she's sitting on the outside the laundromat with Deirdre and talking to her is like beautiful. The first time I saw it, and I'll say this and I'll stop and let you talk, but first time I saw it, I really identified with the husband a lot. And I thought, oh, you know, he's doing everything that he possibly can, you know, and yeah, I'm sure he's not perfect as a mate, but at the same time, like, he feels completely invisible. And what is he supposed to do? He has no other choice. He has to do something. And then at the end, or his end of his main end of his story, where he's like, she's broken the window and he's cleaning up the glass, and she just looks at him like oh man, I can't even talk about it. Like I kind of lost it a little bit. And then he talks to Deirdre, and then everything is okay, whatever. And she just hugs him. And I was just I mean, and I think I said this in our conversation, the movie could have ended there, and I would have been like, okay, that was incredible. So yeah, that's how I identified with it the first time. The second time, I still identified with that, but I found another way to identify with it. And you know, I think every time I watch it, I'll find something else. And that's such a wonderful thing in a film now to have, that I don't think that we have a lot. I mean, we do have those, but in usually in a way like, oh, you know, like in that Avengers movie. Yeah. Did you see this? There's a little shot of this over here. Did you miss that? Yeah, I missed that. No, this is like concepts, you know, like, oh, if I watch it again, I'll get a new concept that I didn't catch before, like a whole way of thinking, like, oh, okay, interesting. So I adore this movie so much. And the more I watch it, the more I love it.
That's really cool. I largely feel the same way. I think that first viewing, some of the humor just wasn't working. It's hard to walk into a movie like this and not bring like a few bags with you. And that was kind of one of my bags of, the hot dog fingers, I get it. It's silly, and they needed, you know, the silliness. And I appreciated what it was there for. Even if I didn't appreciate, you know, the humor, that just, it wasn't quite far enough in the silliness to really hit me. And that's a chunk of the humor in this film. And so walking out, I was like, okay, yeah, that was fine. Overall, it was still very funny. There's still a lot of great, entertaining moments that will make you laugh out loud. Like I watched it twice, you know, last night and then this morning, and there's still moments where I'm going to laugh. It's just going to hit you in the funny bone. But at the same, you know, on repeat viewings, I appreciate more the hot dog fingers, and like you're talking about, the story that's embedded in that. If for no other reason, yes, their connection between the Irish agent and Evelyn, but also because of the extra level of connection it gives to her daughter. Because in that universe, Evelyn's gay, you know, and that's a moment for her to, I can start to wrap my head around. And it's interesting because when she finds herself in that universe the first time, she rejects it, right? She runs into another room, and it leaves her lover confused. Like, what did I do? I'm sorry. Oh, so there's, there's all kinds of like beautiful layers of playing with just in that one story. To your point about like, the more you watch it, the more concepts and things float out of it in the best way possible. And it's so accurately named, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's, you know, almost literally what it's trying to tackle. It's trying to tackle so many topics, and there's so many ways that you can watch this movie, and all of them are right. None of them are wrong. And that's really fascinating to come up with something so broad and so ambitious, and to actually land it. Like, how, Sway? Like, I don't know, man. I don't have the answers, but I think going through it and kind of re-experiencing beat to beat, and getting to see the brilliance in the writing and directing, especially, like, I completely agree that the editing is fantastic, but and I'm sure the editor, I don't know, I imagine this couldn't have been edited by less than 2 people, but maybe. But to me, this isn't an editor's movie. This is a writing and director's movie, because the editing is really putting together the puzzle pieces, and the writing and directing are the ones that are creating all these puzzle pieces. Because you have to see, you know, around the corner, you know, a year away from production, and know what you're going to need on that day of production, how you're going to need to execute it. And I'm sure there's a handful of moments where they had an idea that they're like, it doesn't seem like it's working. The editor is like, get out of the room. Like, let me show you how it's going to work. But I think by and large, this came together because of really incredible vision in the writing and directing. It's all there in the story. It's all there. I want to read the script, but I imagine it's mostly on the page, but there's probably a lot of things that didn't make it on the page that was just like, they knew what they had boards, right? Their director's notebook was probably looked like a set of encyclopedias, or you're just like, okay, we're on to, the third book now. And it's just all fitting together. And it's just, you can see it's a labor of love. They didn't rely on post. They didn't say, oh, we're just going to punt all this to post. They just said, no, we're going to spend, who knows, a week of grabbing inserts. We're going to do a bunch of cutaways, and it's going to take us minimum a week of, hey, Michelle Yeoh, don't make any plans. Like, we're going to be running around this city and that city. We're going to, do you in makeup for half a day here to get like 3 frames worth of stuff. And it's just, you can feel the labor of love on a very tactile level, in a way that reminds me a lot of Sorry to Bother You, right? Where it's just, we're going to do it in camera. Very, very little is going to be left to post, even though there's clearly a lot of post work done. I'm not, denying that it exists. Even the shot of her flying away from the desk to the closet, like that's clearly a composite of her and some really nice camera work, and it's just done to perfection though. You have to know as a director exactly what you're trying to achieve with a shot, and sure, give yourself some wiggle room, but the transitions in this movie are insane. You have to plan for all of that. Very little of it can happen by accident when you're doing all these match cuts, and they have an entire movie of match cuts. It's crazy. And that alone is worth, studying. Up until this point, I've always thought the movie Stay has had the best transitions of any movie I've ever seen. And this is probably better. Like, on an emotional level, I still might go with Stay because of how well it's interconnected with the story they're telling. But this is the same thing. This is still incredibly interconnected with the story they're telling. I mean, some of it is just, very silly, or very simple, at least. Like the way Jobu TikToks in and out of universes. There's this very simple shot sequence of her, if her head is a clock and she's at noon, she kind of ticks to 1, 2, 3. Nope. 2, 1, 11. Here we are. Right. She's looking for the right universe, and it's embodying this idea of space and time right there in a visual frame, as well as it, they have some sound effects that, layers right on top of it of a clock actually ticking. And so it's creating so many layers of depth, and it takes, 5 seconds of screen time to do something that probably took, a few hours of actual on-set time, as well as coordinating with your actor. Like you said, you have to act with intention in this thing. And so this is making sure, and the cast is so good. Stephanie Sue is a revelation. Like, I've seen her in other stuff, don't get me wrong. I think she's really good in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. But she unleashed a can of whoop ass on everyone. So good. We all know Michelle Yeoh is like the one, right? That's not new, but getting to see her flex her actual chops is just incredible. Seeing her, in her early, for me, her early career of Crouching Tiger, sure. Memoirs of a Geisha, yeah. But in Sunshine, like, those are all really good films where she gets to kind of do a thing. You're going to do this one thing, and you're going to do it amazingly well. And then to see her come and do this completely different thing where she embodies so many other types of personalities. You have to create these very strong character personality traits if these other characters are going to be able to live. If you can't see them distinctly apart from one another, they don't exist. And so she has to create these very strong characters and deliver it. And some of them are, you know, hilarious and silly, and some of them are serious. I love the Wong Kar-wai sequences in here and this movie is a movie about movies, you know, as much as it's about depression and life and nihilism and existentialism and optimism and pessimism. Like, it's also about movies. Like, it's clearly built on a foundation of the Matrix, right? There's just heaps and heaps of Matrix between the crab walk between cubicles that she does early on in the film, you know, hiding away from the IRS agent. And then there's the, obviously, you know, bullet stuff, bullet time kind of stuff. But there's also like the Alpha team and Nebuchadnezzar, you know, the jumping in and out of this and that. I picked it up the first time through, and it's funny. Every time I mention this to people, you didn't catch it first time through. Maybe you caught it this time. Other people I've talked to didn't pick up on it, but at 1:21, I have to like time mark it so that people can go, if they don't know what I'm talking about, and listen to it. There's an audio cue directly out of the Matrix, well before she does the bullet stop. It's right after the pinky kung fu phase, when she's fighting, you know, the Alpha Gong Gong, and it's right before the grenade goes off. There's an audio cue that's like the choir and I don't know, synth or strings, where they cue it exactly from the Matrix. And I picked up on that. And I was like, oh, there's more Matrix references coming. And so I knew the bullet time was coming like 30 minutes before it arrived, just off that one cue. Cause I was like, this is that moment. Right. And it's that moment, you know? Yeah. And so there's just so many movies in here, and I love the Wong Kar-wai usage. It felt very in the mood for love. And I adore it. You know, they do the whole, and it's funny, it's in our short film as well. The undercrank, time stepping, frame stepping, where, you know, there's these blurry frames, that happen. And it's the one where she's the kung fu actor now. And she's catching up with Wayman, for the first time in ages, since they were kids, basically. And they're having that conversation about what could have been. And it's very Wong Kar-wai. And if they did nothing else in this movie, they would have had me there.
Yeah, right.
And that's still scratching the. I mean, there's clearly some very. I don't know Jackie Chan films very well, but this clearly had an influence on the film, and just classic kung fu stuff, which I am not fluent in at all. And so it's a movie about movies. It's a movie about all the things, and it's just a really, really huge vision that you can't help but just love. I mean, like you said, you go back through more and more and you can see, the second time through, I did catch something I never would have picked up. You really can't pick up your first time through. It's the first time we meet Joy. What is she doing? She's staring into a washer, and we see the reverse cut. And what is she looking at? She's looking at the laundry tumbling. And what does it look like? Looks like a bagel. It's a big hole in the middle. She's staring into that hole, and kind of lost before, I think, Becky or her mom pulls her out, which is very emblematic of the entire movie. It's pulling her out.
Yeah. Man, I didn't see the Jackie Chan reference, but you're totally right. And that's all over it, because one of the things about Jackie Chan films is that all of his like fight scenes and stuff, and in almost all of his movies, he just grabs what's around him. Like he uses things that are nearby to fight with. And they do that all over this movie. That's how that's
the movie, right?
Get a new skill.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, he's got to cut his paper cuts between your fingers, and then you've got to eat the chapstick or whatever. And he's going to use his fanny pack as like a nunchuck almost. Yeah, like it all over the place, and that kind of fighting style, very quick cuts. Anyway. I didn't see that until you just said that, and I was like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right.
It's right there. Yeah.
Sure.
Just, I think you're putting it so well, like using what's available. And I love the moment when she's surrounded, right? It's after she walks out of the safe, right? She gets her new lung capacity capability. And she walks out and there's just like a SWAT guy and he's holding this big shield. And she starts analyzing, how can I use this shield? And she finds the sign flipper and she's like, yep, that'll do. And I love it. All the action in this film is really great because it's so over the top, right? None of it is just, very serious and very real, right? It's very heightened and dance-like, very classic kung fu. Sometimes people get hit and they do a flip that's in the wrong direction, right? Where the momentum should have taken them one way and they went another. For probably choreography reasons, like, oh, it'll look better and we want them over here. Like I'm thinking specifically in that same sequence with the shield where she's beating everyone's ass with the SWAT shield, and she slaps one guy, moving from right to left, and he does a spin going from his right to left, which is the wrong direction. And I think it's fun. It looks beautiful, but because I think he's able to fly more into the direction of the window to give him more contrast, so that we can see him better. Whereas if he had flown the other direction, it would have pushed him into the wall where there's less contrast, less lighting to backlight him. And so it's like, oh, it's fine, right? This is about the entertainment, the style. This is about buying into the style of what we're doing, not necessarily about getting it right, so to speak. And I love films that are more committed to their tone and to their style than they are to, committing to being grounded or realistic. And what world do we need this kind of movie to be realistic? The only things we need to be real is the drama between the family. Everything else can do whatever it wants. It can be whatever it wants. There are no rules, as she says in Rockland. And it's just genius. Oh my God, there's also like Hitchhiker's references, right? 42 early on in the film, right? Customer's laundry, number 42 is moved upstairs, right? And she goes up and finds that it has googly eyes on it, and that kicks off her frustration. But it doesn't end there. I think 42 is a reference to the improbability machine, and how that connects this universe to all other universes as being as improbable as you can. And that's where the weirdness kicks in. And so it's lovingly having all these homages to other universes, other stories, in order to tell this story, this particular thing. And God, you can't.
Yes, and right back to Hitchhiker's Guide. The point is not what, like, she's searching for her daughter to save her daughter, but the point is not saving her. The point is, what is the question you're asking of to her daughter, which is the whole point of Hitchhiker's Guide, which is you're asking the wrong question.
That's right.
The question is, what is the question? What is the right question? The search for that, and it's the same thing where she's just trying to discover that, and great points there.
It's so good. I'm going to jump around now because, again, my notes are chaos.
As is this movie. Fair enough. So one of the things I really loved is that they're being audited. It's a very simple writing decision, because being audited is not something you run into in many movies. Like, I think off the top of my head, I can only think of one other movie, which was about a tax agent, right? An IRS agent. Otherwise, how often is being audited like a thing in a film? And it's so great here because it's pertinent to the story at large of her life is being examined and her life is being audited through her daughter, and what her daughter is forcing to the surface, what her husband is forcing to the surface. Every detail will be brought into the light and judged. It's not just, oh, we're going to look at it. It's like, no, she's about to be judged, and she's going to have to make some decisions on what stays and what goes. What does she own and what does she get rid of? And
it's just a really simple, beautiful idea that is not obvious at all. Whenever you're starting a story, like, oh, we're going to tell a story about someone who can jump in and out of universes at will. Okay, you know what that needs? IRS. Like, we gotta have an audit if you're gonna do this right. Like, it's not obvious at all. And it's such a genius stroke of imagination, because it allows for so many other things to happen, right? The power of the government and the power to call security, a really big, boring, vacant office building to take advantage of. And that's so easy to come by, right? That's a budget saving idea in so many ways. Cubicles, lifeless cubicles all over the place. You don't want beautiful stuff in this movie, except where you need it. And for the crux of the story to take place in this really boring, cubicled, tedious atmosphere is absolutely perfect for the story they're talking about. I love seeing Wayman whenever they're walking in to the building. He sees an old Asian couple kissing in public, and we immediately understand him. We immediately get him. This is what he wants. This is what he needs. And so whenever, we're thinking about the divorce papers, we're starting to very strongly get a picture of who he is and what's missing. Because otherwise you see the divorce papers and you see how happy he is and how much he's trying. You're just like, why is he wanting a divorce? He doesn't feel unhappy.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. That moment is without that moment, his whole role in this is like lost. But you have that 1 5-second shot of him seeing them, and you see him longing. Like, I can see him longing for that. And then everything else he does in the rest of the movie has a whole different meaning because of those 5 seconds. And if you miss those 5 seconds, you just don't like this guy. Right? I'm so glad you brought that up.
So good. I love the flashback when she's getting her first jolt of scan, right? It's scanning her life and potential paths that she could have taken. And the first thing we kind of see is her father's disappointment when she's delivered, right? And the doctor says to the father, "I'm sorry, it's a girl." Ooh, that's a nice punch. And it's also a really great criticism of China. Because China for a long time has had a one-child policy. And the consequence of that is a lot of fathers wanting boys, right? Boys carry the family legacy, is the worldwide tradition, up until this point at least, that men carry on the family legacy. Very few cultures where that isn't true. And for him, for this policy to be enacted meant a lot to a lot of families. And there were a lot of abandoned girls, right? Because, if you had a girl, she's going to be dropped off by the stork on someone's doorstep at an orphanage, and we're going to try again. And it just had this cataclysmic effect on Chinese culture and society in ways that they're still feeling. They're still feeling the consequences of that. I think they finally, turned that off. But I'll have to check. I can't for sure.
I think
remember.
so too. I think
that's my impression, right?
But it did damage.
A lot of damage. And so that's just a really simple, subtle thing, but I also love that they kept her, but it also kind of speaks to her father and the way he treats her. And there's layers here if you kind of understand some of the other cultural impacts. And that's the little I know, and I know very little of Asian culture at large, much less Chinese culture. I know bits and pieces, kind of what I've known from a handful of friends. I didn't grow up around a lot of Asian kids, small, tiny Texas town. So big surprise there. I only knew a few Asian kids in my school, which was kind of a surprise, if you consider that my town population was like less than 1,500. And so, yeah, you wouldn't expect any. But yeah, so that and whatever, comedians, right? As they lovingly joke about this and that. And so, yeah, from there we see her first jump, switching her shoes to the wrong feet, right? And imagine being in the janitor's closet. I love the idea that for her to break out of her shell, she has to do things that feel wrong, right? Putting your shoes on the opposite feet feels wrong. Imagine being somewhere other than where you are. For her, feels wrong to actually live somewhere else. We see at the opening, right? She's sitting at her desk, receipts all around. Her husband's trying to get her to think about a party. She's like, no, you need to be thinking about the food. I need to be thinking about these taxes. You need to be thinking about my dad who's about to wake up. He just got in from China. You know he's hungry. And he's trying to get her to live outside the moment and to be something else. And so for her first experience is to, be something other than what she really truly is. Why would I ever have shoes on the wrong feet? Why would I ever imagine being anywhere other than exactly where I'm at right now? And so this is the first step in getting her to relate to Joy, who struggles.
Yeah.
I love that this is an R-rated movie for nothing other than language and kind of bloody gags. They could have went the safe route. They could have made this a PG-13 film, which to me also indicates that the rating system is wrong. This should be a PG-13 film. And I don't see a good case being made that, a 13-year-old can't deal with the bloody gags if they want, or with, bad language. Like there's nothing to me that suggests that I couldn't have handled this as a 13-year-old. Though maybe I also didn't have the normal life of a 13-year-old. More on that.
No, I agree.
Eventually.
I agree. I mean, there's a little bit of, blood that would be scary to maybe an 8-year-old, but like if you're talking about 10, 11, 12, like, yeah, 13, I think that'd be fine. Like I wouldn't want my son necessarily to watch this. I think it's a little bit violent, but in a couple of years, absolutely.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so I love that they said, you know what, screw it. We're going to tell the story that we're trying to tell, not the one that's commercially friendly at best. That's a bold decision, actually. Whenever you have investors, they want as broad a release, as broad of an audience as possible. And they said, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Hats off, man. That's a great decision. Great decision. I think it's worth it. And it pays dividends, right? Even in the Rock universe, right? They make a language joke. They even make a language joke in it.
Yeah.
And she literally points out that it's a joke. And then she heightens it by, dropping an F-bomb. Beautiful. Just excellent use of an R rating. Obviously, I mean, this doesn't even need to be pointed out again, but tons of little flourishes with clock ticking, transition shots, just thinking through how can we tie emotional beats to visual gags, right? That whole empathy fight, I heard it described as an empathy fight after she starts taking on Wayman's perspective, right? The googly-eyed fight. And she's going up the staircase and one by one fighting them through giving them what they need. What?
Oh my God.
You have to think through so much as a writer to say, okay, we need something that's visually exciting, that works as a fight, but also can double as emotional therapy. And so from the grenade that turns into the perfume that had to be set up in the first act, right? The first 10 minutes when she meets that guy. And he's like, oh, your perfume reminds me. That's exactly what my wife wore. So you can have a callback to that at the end in the third act. Yes. Like you have to think through that and okay, it'll be a grenade and that'll turn into a perfume bottle. And then, she runs into the next guy, right? And she gives him a neck massage that easily also looks like she's breaking his neck. And it becomes a thank you. Flashbacks, but it also doubles as a flashback for an x-ray. We can now point out exactly what's happening and why it's therapeutic. That's all very visual and emotionally engaging. And so many things, right? Just all these little flourishes that take a lot of thought and combining that with a great execution.
The Ratatouille guy. So how do you put emotion into something so ridiculous, right? Where there's a raccoon who is controlling a guy under his hat, a chef under his hat, right? And he's been exposed by her in that world. And they've gotten the raccoon taken away and he's so heartbroken. And so he, she carries him like and throws him, and it's absolutely insane, ridiculous, and hilarious, and yet at the same time so emotional because it's tied in with all the other like really actual, identifiable between me and you emotional things, right? So I think your example of the X-ray of the guy who had the bad back is a great example. Like I hurt my back the other day. My back, I'm like in a lot of pain, and I totally identify with that. This guy has probably been in pain his whole life, and so she's just easing that for him. And then right after that, we see this ridiculous thing, but it's very emotive for that individual, right? So now we're saying it's not about you identifying. It's about you empathizing, you seeing from that point of view, even if you don't have an experience of that. Maybe you've never hurt your back before, that's fine, but you got to understand like how limiting that is to a human being. And now when you understand that, or you put yourself in that feeling, all of a sudden it becomes emotional when that person gets relief, right? I've never been in the service and away from my family for 6 months or a year. But why is it when I watch videos of soldiers coming home and hugging their children, I lose my shit, like crying? It's because I can feel that emotion. I can empathize with that. So, and I think anybody watching those videos, the same thing. This is the same thing, but it's taking it to a whole nother level that is not part of this universe, which is this can happen. This raccoon can control this chef. This could happen. This is happening somewhere right now, right? The sausage fingers relationship. This is happening somewhere right now. It has to be ridiculous. If it's just a little different, it's not enough. It's got to be so different that there's no way you could have imagined it, right? There's no way you could have expected that to be on the screen. And then to make it emotional is just brilliant. It's so brilliant, right? Not just in the writing, but in the editing and in the music too, because the music ties it all together, right? It brings the guy with the hurt back into the situation with the sausage fingers, into the situation with the raccoon, into the situation with the perfume. It all ties it all together. It's great. I love that moment.
It's so good. I love jumping a little bit here.
Yeah.
I love Stephanie Sue's patience. Her performance, I'm really just wowed by it. She's so patient on screen to take up space. Like she's never in a rush to get to the punchline, to her line. Even that moment, right, when she's saying sucked into a bagel, she's singing it, and you could feel just this pregnant pause as she's just staring at us, sucked into a bagel. And she really just, throughout the entire film, she finds these beautiful moments to just wait, to make you wait, to see what's coming. That's hard to do as an actor sometimes, to be comfortable taking up space. Like it's a challenge, and you have to commit to the moment. You have to trust your director. Sometimes, your director might tell you, take a beat, take your time. And you have to lean into it sometimes, because I'm of the opinion, make the director say a little faster.
Mm-hmm.
Push it. And then once they say a little faster, you're like, okay, now I know where my limit is. Because if you don't, it's just going to constantly be, okay, let's go one more time. Take your time, really count to 10 in your head, or whatever. And when he says count to 10, count to 15.
That is a great acting note. That's a really great acting note. Take your time as much as you can and have the director speed you up.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of the crappy acting I see is because it's, partially, not all, not completely, but a lot of it is like super fast, like too fast, right? Like not as fast as a normal conversation would be. I wouldn't have pauses, necessarily if I'm just saying these words, right? But if I'm thinking
and
then there's a
reacting,
pause, right?
yes, and it's all about knowing your moment, knowing your scene, because there's other scenes, right, where Stephanie and Michelle and Key, they're all just trampling each other. They all can't get their lines out fast enough, right? That moment when she's trying to describe Ratatouille and she calls it Rakuni, right? They're all just right on top of each other, just trampling. And it's great. It's chaotic. And it's hilarious. I love Stephanie Sue's reaction. The way she plays the humor of seeing, Joy seeing her mom get it wrong by such a wide margin. Like you're trying to think of a rat and you said a raccoon and she just loses it. She's just laughing like, you're talking about Ratatouille. And the more she thinks about it, the funnier it gets to her. Like, and it's finding the moment of what requires a beat, what doesn't. And it's just feeling it. Cause sometimes if you're on Gilmore Girls, I'm sorry, you don't get a beat. It's just all go, 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 go. That's part of the style, part of the tone. And it's trusting your director whenever they say, hey, go faster here. Faster means faster. But take your time. That means take your time too. And I'm hoping and expecting for a lot of fun things to come from Stephanie Sue. She's just really dynamite. I loved how they used Joy and Wayman for exposition, right? Just in case you might have lost an audience member between the first 20 minutes, we're going to now circle back, insert Joy and Wayman into the mix, and make sure they're explaining to the audience exactly what's happening, right? They start narrating moments of potential confusion, just so that we're crystal clear and not going to lose anything. Whenever Evelyn is fighting the security guard and they knock each other in the head with pipes and they lose their powers. That's whenever Joy is like, I think they lost their powers. Because Wayman is asking her like, what just happened? Because they just start slap fighting, right? They don't know what they're doing. And Joy has to explain to him, I think they lost their powers. Oh, we'll do XYZ. That's not weird enough, right? And she's just coaching the audience through just in case. But it's logical. It works within the story because that's the kind of thing that Joy would understand and pick up on faster than Wayman. And then as a team, they kind of start clicking like, oh, no. Here's what she needs to do. And it's just a really, really smart way to add a little exposition, make sure you're never losing anybody, keep it all humming.
Great point.
Oh man, this is tough. Okay. Before we get into the really choppy waters here. I love the rock moment. I love that it happens visually at the perfect moment when Evelyn is so overwhelmed, right? She turns into a rock. And it's a great use of stillness to settle us from also being overwhelmed. At this point in the story, there is just so much clicking. Like visually, we're taxed. We're about to need a reboot. Like we are just struggling, right? But within the story, it makes complete perfect sense, right? Evelyn is so overwhelmed that she turns into a rock, right? This is where Joy is. This is where Joy is sitting. She's a rock. She's unmoving, unfeeling, non-speaking, right? We're sitting at the edge of a cliff, right? And this is all the things that Joy is experiencing. It's too much. And she has to go into this state of nothingness because right now she's staring at a cliff. And that's what she wants. She wants to go over. It's a simple metaphor for suicide, one that I've used in one of our stories. It's just very easy to grasp of the magnitude of everything that's going on. And it's beautiful because for Evelyn to help her daughter, she has to learn to change herself first. And this ultimately evolves into the empathy, right? Where, she learns from Wayman about how necessary it is to love everything, even if it doesn't romantically in your head sound like the thing. And I love that's what we're getting out of that Wong Kar-wai sequence, right? Where they're in the alley and Wayman is in this nice, suit. He's got these beautiful rimmed glasses on. She's in this gorgeous dress everything's got this, crazy tint, and we keep cutting in and out of these undercrank step frame sequences, and it's just perfect for the lesson for him to drop. Like, this is the stuff that I had to do to survive. This is how I get through life, is just embracing it. That's all. I'm not denying it, just saying it's okay. And I can imagine another life. What does he say? Something like, doing taxes with you sounds like a good life. Well done, sir. I think this gets to the choppy waters. I don't know if I'll eject or not. We'll see. But
yeah, that's fine.
How do you interpret the bagel? So obviously it's for me, what it's obvious is depression, nihilism, and this whole film to me seems to be discussing how to be existential in the face of nihilism, or how to embrace that without falling into the trap of nihilism. And I love the use of science here, because I feel like culturally we're more and more shifting away from religion that provides all these beautiful answers and solutions to everything. And instead we're more and more embracing science, and the unknown, and trying to know more. And as they say, the more you know, it makes you feel small, insignificant, like a piece of shit sometimes, worthless, meaningless. And so we're trying to find a balance of, we can embrace this existential, existence, without going into nihilism. And so you can't, the first time Evelyn is trying to meet Joy, or meet Jobu, right? Jobu is what Joy really is. He's telling her, Alpha Wayman is telling her, don't do it. Don't even try it. You can't reason with Jobu. And that's because you can't reason with depression. It does not work. You can't do it. Mm-hmm. And it's so good, because what I love about the naming convention here is that her name is Joy. And it's speaking to the reasoning aspect. You can label it Joy, won't make it so. Yeah. I got more, but how do you process that whole storyline between her daughter, her husband, the bagel, everything?
All at once. I mean, on the first watch, I thought I didn't like it. At the first watch, I thought it was making light of that, of the heaviness and realism of what that is. Because I felt the same. I felt that, there's so much weight and importance, and I guess unimportance, I don't know, at whatever this is. You're making it a fucking bagel, like, really, but then the next time I watched it, I thought, of course, why not? It could be a bagel, it could be an actual black hole, it could be a pizza, it could be a thought, right, that sucks you in and sucks you down, and that sucks other people in with you, people that you love. Like, yeah, why not? I honestly don't have a lot to say other than that. It works for me now, but the first time I watched it didn't. Again, there was so much going on, and the first viewing, you just can't, unless you can process a lot more than I can at one time. It's really hard to see all these things for what they are supposed to be, what they're meant to be, right? And so the sausage fingers and the raccoony and the bagel and stuff, I didn't really get it at first, but the second time I watched it, I totally got it, as in like I don't know. Everybody's going to have their different view of it, I think. But the point is that it could be something as small as a memory, right? Her memory of her thinking that it would have been better had she not been, married him at one point could destroy her, could destroy her reality. Absolutely. You put everything into a thought like that, could destroy everything. Your relationship with him, your business, your relationship with your daughter and your father, like all of these things. And so it's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing, but how do you stop it? When it happens, like when it's created, how do you stop it? Like that's the same thing as a black hole. It's just going to suck you in unless you have something to latch onto, some kind of grounding, like something as small as googly eyes. I don't know. I'm not sure, but yeah. Tell me a little bit about how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think it punched me in the face the first time. It was like, it's so funny, I guess, just how you can sit next to someone and have a completely different experience.
I love it
because it was the most obvious thing in the film for me, because I also, of all these characters, Joy, right?
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's very obvious that, it's a big metaphor for depression and suicidal ideation. You definitely towards the end, understand how close she is to just being done with it all. But in the parking lot, it doesn't feel quite as big whenever they're having this, big blowout emotional moment. Cause she's like, I'm just tired of this. It's when I'm around you. And she starts to kind of point the finger at a mom. It's clearly not her mom. But it's as good an avenue as any when you can finally put your finger on it. Like, yeah, I get it. It's you. If I can just escape you, maybe it doesn't hurt as much. No, it's still going to be her, because it's not a bagel. That's the problem. Depression isn't a bagel. Existentialism, nihilism, it's not a bagel. It's maybe for Joy, it's experiencing everything all the time. And maybe part of it is her mom, because we learn at the beginning, right? Her mom saw the potential in Joy and she pushed her to try to be all these things. And ultimately we can also extract that that's also Evelyn judging herself and vicariously inserting that into her daughter, because Evelyn, missed out on all these lives, all these opportunities, all these things that she wasn't. And we even hear her husband throw the gauntlet down in front of the IRS agent when he says, I'm sorry, my wife confuses hobbies with careers. Right. And that's a slap in the face to Evelyn. And so these things are all intertwined together. It's Evelyn trying to push her daughter to be more than she was. And her daughter not being up for it. Like, maybe her daughter doesn't want to be anything. Maybe she just wants to enjoy life. Why is that wrong? It's not. This is all we get if you want to enjoy it. Watching video games and, on YouTube, not even playing the games, just watching other people play video games. That's okay. There's no wrong way to really experience life other than not trying to experience it and enjoy it on your own terms. I think that's the only real failure, is choosing to not. Whereas if you just do something, whatever it is that makes you happy, that brings you joy, that's the only thing you can do. And so it's combining all these things, like Joy feeling overwhelmed with the possibilities and feeling like a failure for not living up to any of it, or just simply being so sensitive to everything in life that it overwhelms you. I identify with that.
As most teenagers probably would. Like, there's just this world tries to pull everything from you, and you have to be on the defensive sometimes, but then also you have to be on the offensive sometimes. It's a whole lot. Of course it's going to be confusing, but very great point. Cause in the end, she's sitting there in the IRS office, all her family's around her, and she's just taking in that moment. She's just taking it in. Like, instead of living in a moment where she didn't marry him, or living in a moment where she was and she was a successful singer, living in a moment where, like, all of these other moments that could and do exist can exist somewhere else. They can be, and you can be as well. and she actually is in that moment. And so it's a little bit of honoring a lot of stuff. It's honoring her feeling her missed opportunities. It's honoring Joy's feeling of just overwhelming demand from her mother and the world, possibly her and herself. It's honoring she honors her husband's needs, right? Like by kissing him in the lobby there. And so he can be more of who he's supposed to be because he knows that she's behind him, like honoring her father by bringing him with them. Like it's just all of those things, but it's all encapsulated in being present in that moment, right?
Yes.
And experiencing it for what it is. And granted, I will say that it's so much easier to say than do, right? Especially when you're talking about depression, especially when you're talking about feeling overwhelmed, and feeling like you need to be more than what you actually are. Like I feel that every single day, all the time, constantly, and I think you do too. And I think part of that can be a good thing. Part of that can be, well, it's, okay, what am I going to do today? Or what am I going to plan for next or whatever. But when you let it define you in all your moments, like that's when the everything bagel starts taking over, right?
Absolutely. And that final shot is so good because as you pointed out, right, it's her looking around her family and her situation. She's still getting audited. That didn't go away.
Yeah, that's not going away. Great. Yeah.
And loving it. She's there. And what I love about that moment is we can hear all the other universes. We never cut away. And she shoves it away because it's tempting. It's still there, but we can see she's still present and she doesn't allow herself to get pulled away into other universes. We never cut away. We stay right there with her and she stays right there. It's okay to be a little distracted. It's one of those old, whatever silly adages of you can't determine what birds fly over your head, but you can decide which ones to give a nest. You don't always get to choose your thoughts, but you can, as much as you can, choose what you contemplate on. You can reject. And it goes back to what Wayman says, Alpha Wayman says, whenever he's given her that big breakdown, when he compares it to the clay pot, he says, it's like a clay pot. Every time you experience one of these other lives, every time, as an analogy, every time you think about what an opportunity you missed, something that could have been, that creates a crack in your pot and water can leak through. But what does he tell her? In time, with practice, you'll be able to heal those cracks. And it's just about practicing being mindful, being present, and letting go and being okay with that, because ultimately that's what she has to do. Once she's able to finally experience what Joy is experiencing, once she's able to kind of walk in her shoes and see the temptation, because it's close for Evelyn too. She almost lets herself go. Once she returns, gets her feedback right, she now has to let Joy go, but at the same time fight for her. She can't control everything. And that's that moment in the parking lot, right? Where she just says, wait, no, you are fat, right? That's this great moment of, I'm still me. I still feel the way I feel, yet I want you. Joy is trying to leap into the abyss, right? And I love this moment when she's almost gone and Evelyn grabs her, right? And she says, I'm your mother. And then Gong Gong grabs Evelyn. And then everyone else holds on. It's a community. And it's getting at the social aspect, I think, of depression, because it's such a weird thing. It feels individual, but it's always, I think, in relation to community and to your social life. It's a feeling of worthlessness. But what gives you worth if not other people? It's a weird tangle.
Yeah.
You want to be left alone, but you don't. You want people around you. It's exactly what Joy is experiencing. She wants to let go, but she wants her rock mom to chase her. Don't chase me, but chase me. It's weird. You need people. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
And how do you tackle that in a film? It's unbelievable how well they do that.
It is
to where you
because
would get it.
in a movie filled with action and beautiful, crazy, wild sequences, the big climax happens in a parking lot with a hug.
Yeah.
Come on, fuck me up, Daniels. Like y'all did it, man. That's such a great, simple idea. Like the visual effects are really fantastic with the bagel spinning out of control, sucking things in. Like they didn't settle for that being the big moment though. They settled for a hug to really encapsulate everything you can't fix and everything you got to do. Like it's just, what else?
Yeah.
I'll let that whole conversation go with that, I guess. I will circle back to two jokes. One that I really loved and one that I thought they should have cut. Yes, this gets into a criticism.
Oh, okay, cool.
The one that I love is the bondage because it's so like left field and it might feel inappropriate, but I love that it was significant for that character. That what made him feel loved and seen was S&M or whatever you call it. It's like ball gags and like being spanked, right? And she met that need. She was like, I see you. I'll give you what you need to feel whole. That's a really cool thing to not be judgmental on because I don't get the BDSM thing. I don't know, maybe someday I will, but it's not in my repertoire at the moment. I appreciate though that they explored that and they didn't qualify it. They just said it's okay for you to feel loved this way and not feel judged because of it. And they put that on display. That's a really cool idea. The joke that I didn't think should have been in there in part was the piñatas. They have the first version. There's two cuts to the piñata. The first one I thought was great, worked fine. It's silly, played right in, but they do it again, I think at the wrong time. They should have cut it where this is a big emotional flow is happening, like huge. There's so much momentum. The music is building. And then they cut to them as a piñata. This is where I think it's the fight scene. It's the fight scene between Jobu and Evelyn. And they are going at it. They're cutting in and out. And this is all about Evelyn transitioning each fight into something beautiful and harmless. She's like, I'm going to take your punches and I'm going to take your baton that you're trying to kill me with. I'm going to turn it into flowers. And I'm going to take your punch and turn it into a hug, right? It's her fighting. It's the empathy fight. It's the extension of the empathy fight of, I'm going to take what Wayman has taught me. I'm going to use it for you. And there's just this beautiful emotional through line that's coming through. And then we suddenly drop it all to hang out as piñatas. And I think ideally it makes complete sense. It works on the page, but in the flow of the edit and what the audience is experiencing, I think it's a terrible idea because it interrupts our emotional through line. And now when we cut back, we have to restart.
Yeah.
You killed our flow. And it's better to keep that emotional roller coaster moving at that point. The rhythm is too strong. The emotions are too high. There are times some films can use a joke in order to compound the emotional punch through maybe some kind of demonstration of like unity or connection. That happens. I'm not saying a joke can never work in those circumstances. This joke doesn't because piñatas are literally disconnected, stagnant, and you killed your music. And it's just a bad call, I think. And I think that sequence in this film ultimately has a much bigger right hand to knock you out if you just cut that 7-second joke. It was the wrong call. Without it, suddenly you, as an audience, we are being steamrolled emotionally in the best way possible. You're winding up your big punch for the parking lot. And if you keep that momentum going, I think the delivery is just it. Everyone will be absolutely crying. Not that we don't get there anyway, but it's the difference between, a really good cry that you hold back and everyone just having an ugly cry that you can't. Mm-hmm. And there's still some
point.
good ugly cries in here, but I think that's just one small moment, really ill placed. That could have been a little bit stronger. Or I mean, honestly, I think it could have been a nuclear bomb instead of like whatever a carpet bombing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else that you would have changed?
I don't think so, man. I am in awe. I'm really, truly in awe. Every time I watch some of these sequences, especially the sequence right before The Rock, that's when they do what must be 200 clips just fly right by. I'm sure someone out there has got like a tumbler filled with every single frame that they flash by. I would love to see that. I would love to see each one of those frames broken out. Some of them, because of the nature, like pop out really well. There's before that sequence, there's another sequence where they're kind of flashing through, and you have that weird alien monster wagging his tongue. It's so brief. It's all of like 5 frames maybe, but it's so good. It's just so weird, and it plays really well. No, I don't. I think if anything, I would love to pick their brains and yeah. I'm not one to watch a lot of behind the scenes stuff, but this is one I'm tempted to just go through a few videos and see what did they do.
Oh, dude, I would digest all of that for this film.
It's just beautiful. I would love. I'll probably go read the script. I'm just curious how much was on the page versus just hint at it. We got the book. You know, we got everything set aside. We can move on. Like we're directing it, so we don't need to, put every single frame into the film. I don't even think it's possible to put every frame of this movie into the script. But yeah, so I'll read the script. I'd love to see what their director's notebook, their director's book looks like, just to see how they prepared. I'm not even sure what the budget and shooting time was. I'll be impressed if this was less than 8 weeks. In fact, I'm going to
God, no way. No
right.
way.
There's just no way. This has to be minimum 3 months. Minimum 3 months. I can see how some of these sequences could probably go pretty quick just because you're doing a lot of stuff in the office building. That's easy to build, but yeah, I have no idea. Yeah. Any final thoughts, man?
Just the, that I think one of the reasons I identify, well, obviously the personal reasons, that we've already addressed, I identify with film, but also just this notion and concept of infinity. Really, I just absolutely adore it. What?
Okay.
What? Your face. You
Yeah.
just made a face.
Sorry. I just lost my mind. This can't
You found
be right.
something.
Yes. Okay. $25 million budget, which I can believe they stretched it to the absolute maximum, but I can believe that. What I can't believe is that they shot this within 37 or 38 days.
Oh my gosh. That is a marathon.
That is a marathon.
Wow.
My God.
It's like a 2-hour marathon.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Man. I wonder if that's calendar days or if that's production days. That's got to be production days at a minimum, because then now you're talking like closer to 2 months calendar wise. But
they probably did like all the laundromat shots and then all the office shots and, a week here. And now we're going to go to the office. Now a week here or 2 weeks here or whatever. And I mean, right? You can't go back and forth. I don't know.
You got to be on it. On it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Very.
That's amazing. Wow.
Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, no, you're good. I'm glad you brought that up. No, just this concept of infinity and, everything. What is everything? And everywhere. What is everywhere? And all at once. It like kind of blows my mind. And when growing up, I grew up Catholic, and, the concept that God always was and always will be, and I think that everybody who thinks about that, it like literally breaks your brain. Like people will go insane thinking about it. But I love thinking about it. I love having a thought where I literally could say no. If you asked me how to describe it, I could not I couldn't open my mouth and put words on it. And having because I can pretty much talk about bullshit about anything. But having something in my brain that it's impossible to say words to describe really just makes me feel so good. You know, with some people it might be scary, but to me it makes me feel so good to think about everything, every possibility happening right now, all at the same time is awesome. So this concept of infinity is wonderful to me. I listen to lectures about it all the time, and scientists talking about it, and it's just fantastic. So any kind of movie like that, I just adore. And then when you combine it with emotion and feeling, then all of a sudden that infinity is in, like, my infinity is different from your infinity because my brain is different than your brain, you know? And then there's an infinity of infinities, right? And now we're having fun. It's just a wonderful, wonderful concept that we are aware enough to know exists, but not aware enough to understand. And I love that feeling.
I love that this movie did a couple of things. I'll try not to forget them. One, it took a very common idea. That was the first comment you made when we walked out of the theater, was everything's multiverse nowadays. Everyone's got a multiverse. And fair enough. Walking into this movie, though, we expect a big interdimensional battle with some big bad, and to discover that there is no big bad. It's her daughter. It's, you know, more personal, more intimate, and therefore, as we said at the top of the episode, more real. Was a great choice. I love that they took this really, really big idea and turned it into such a simple idea, or maybe inverted, right? They took a really simple idea and made it very, very big. And that's just such a great idea and a really good turn of the screw for the audience, because walking in, I'm expecting, you know, some crazy alien monster who's going and devouring universes. And then when they flip the card over and you're like, oh, it's her daughter. Wait, what are the stakes? Oh, I see the stakes. That's such a good subversion of expectations. I know some shows recently have tried to subvert expectations and they do a terrible job. It's really hard to do that in such a satisfying way that they did here, you know, in everything, everywhere. The other thing that I love that they did, you know, putting one foot back into the depression conversation, is they made that conversation accessible and palatable for everyone. That's a really heavy topic that not everyone gets. And so to translate that in a way to make it fun, engaging, without overwhelming you, that's a really hard chore. And they did it. And I don't know if I've seen any other film, many other films. I can think of maybe one, but even that, it's hard. It's really hard to make this something that people who don't live in this kind of world want to engage with. But I'm sure tons and tons of people who haven't had any experience with depression were able to enjoy this, see it, and maybe understand a little bit more, you know, and maybe interact a little bit more with a part of humanity that they're not as familiar with. Because it's very easy for someone who's never struggled with it to say, oh, you just need to go for a walk. You just need to get some sunshine. Yeah, well, maybe that might be true, but you got to remove the just. Like, that could help, but it isn't going to just fix shit. Like it could help, you know, put me in the right direction, get me moving, get me out of bed. But there is no just, because it's not a thing you can put your finger on. It's not a thing that you can fix with a solution. It's much bigger than that. And it's harder to tackle. And so going through something like this, making it accessible, making it a conversation without dragging everyone down underneath the water, while also dragging everyone underneath the water, right? That's Evelyn's whole journey. And it's such, I'm glad we watched it again. I probably was never going to watch this movie again, to be honest. Watching it the first time, I was like, I'm good. Now watching it again, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is something to revisit from time to time for sure.
I suggested it because when I got back in town from from Austin when I was there visiting. My mother-in-law was here helping with the kids while I was there, and she and my wife both they said, hey, let's watch Everything Everywhere. I was like, really? You want to? Okay. Because, anytime my wife says she wants to watch a movie, I'm totally down. 'Cause she's so, she's storied out. I mean, her whole life has been about reading stories and everything. So she thinks that most movies are terrible. And, I mean, in a way she's probably right. But she thinks that most stories are terrible. Most stories are very obvious. I won't say movies, I'll say stories. So when she said she wanted to watch this, I said, oh, you're in for it, because you've never seen a story like this. This is different. And then even when I told her that we were doing this as an episode, she said, oh, I'll watch that again with you. It's like, oh, what? Wow. Okay. And she wept.
Wow.
She just wept. I'm like, see, some stories are really, really good. No. So anyway,
Yeah, she's.
I'm glad we did it.
She's on another level when it comes to like English story analysis. Like she puts us both to shame.
She just knows, she can see shit coming from a mile away. That's the thing. It's like, it's hard to surprise her, For me, I'm just, stupid going along with it. Like, oh, that happened. Yeah. But she can see it a mile away. So anyway.
That's awesome. What are you going to recommend this week?
So, I was thinking, I was like, okay, do I do like a multiverse kind of recommendation thing? But I hate almost all multiverse movies now. I just don't like them because they're too basic, which is why I love this one, because it's not basic at all. So I went with something that was a little bit, it's not multiverse, but it's memory based and different life based. And it's going to be totally off the cuff for you, but I'm going to recommend Hook because I know, right? It's
because
like,
of
what?
Spielberg and
Robin Williams. Robin Williams. And because he just does it so well. It's, he turns out, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to ruin anything if you haven't seen Hook, but I'm going to recommend it. It's about memory, remembering who you are, and yet at the same time being present and loving who you've become, and letting who you are dictate, still help define who you were, help define who you are now. So,
dang, that's really good. I was walking in. I actually intended to recommend What Dreams May Come, another Robin Williams story.
Really?
That tackles all the same stuff. But somewhere halfway through, I realized I want to recommend another film because people might be familiar with Wet Dreams, but a lot of people probably aren't as familiar with another story called, and it's a toughie. It's called Wrist Cutters, a love story. It's almost as brutal as it sounds. It's certainly about suicide, depression, all these things. But it tries. This is the other film I was talking about that puts a comedic punch to it. And so it's not as heavy as it sounds. It's very dark humor. And so if you want another film tackling tough subjects with really, dark, edgy humor, this is the one for you. Wrist Cutters. I forget the guy's name. It's the kid from, oh my God, Almost Famous, and Shannon Sossaman, who's fantastic. And so I one more time, I recommend Wrist Cutters.
Okay, can we stop saying that?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
And so stay tuned.
Great.
Stay tuned for next week. Do you have an opinion on this or that?
Yeah, that's great. Returns.
Okay. We'll take.
I don't know the other one, just because I don't know the other one.
Oh, fair enough. We'll take a look at the sequel to The Mummy, and I think this will be very illuminative of that first conversation. And so we'll check out The Mummy Returns and see if they make the jump or not. And so stay tuned for that. And if you're enjoying the show, want to see the show notes, don't forget to subscribe, review, and leave us a note. And you can see the show notes at thepestlepodcast.com/everything everywhere all at once.
And our quote of the day today is from it's a Persian adage. A Persian king called his sages and asked them for one quote that would be accurate at all times and in all situations. They went into deep contemplation and finally told the king, "This too shall pass." And yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say. I think it's, yeah.
At the end of the day, I've heard another version of that where it's, tell me something that if you said it in happy times would make me sad, and if you said it in sad times would bring me happiness. And that was the response. This too shall pass. Like, no matter what it is, if you hold out long enough, it'll pass. Like, I know it sucks to say that in the context of a good moment, but certainly in the times of bad moments, like they can't endure forever. On average, like I'm sure that you can dream up a circumstance that it can drag on forever. But on average, most things pass, most things go away, and the sun does come back out. So whatever you're doing,
well,
hang on.
I totally agree. I've heard that a long time, and I think it's definitely more welcoming than it is. Maybe that's my brain. I don't know, but I think it definitely feels better than not, if that makes sense. So, because maybe I'm a glass half full person, but in the bad times, it obviously feels good. This too shall pass, right? But in the good times, it also feels good because it makes me be there. It makes me think, oh, if this is going to pass, I'm going to be here right now. Like I need to be here right now. I need to focus on that. I need to, like, what's good? What's good around me, and find those things instead of brooding on, oh my gosh, it's going to go away. Like I'm going to be sad again one day, or whatever. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's how I am. I'm not sure, but it's definitely it's a glass half full situation for me, at least at this point. So, and maybe that's a litmus test of how are you feeling, right? You say that, and like, does that make you feel mostly okay, or like mostly better, or does it make you feel mostly worse? Like, I don't know, but it's brilliant adage.
Truly.
Love ending it. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I mean, this is a 2-hour episode or something, like close maybe close, like hour and 45, but I knew it would be, with a film like this, we could talk about it for days. So thank you guys for joining us. Really appreciate it. Make sure to join us next week where we cover The Mummy Returns, and share us with your friends, review us, tell us what you'd like to see us do. We'd love to hear from you, and who knows, maybe we'll cover a film that you suggest. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch the movies.